Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening for those who are joining us globally from different time zones. Thank you for joining our event today. From being fast to being right, specification and verification in DevOps. In this webinar, we will do a deep dive into DASA DevOps Specify and Verify course. This course has been designed for teams by Luca and Gianni, our respected speaker, and a DASA ambassador. Next slide, please. I am Eliza, your host today, and I look forward to enabling learners, partners, and organizations who have joined us today and show the value of specification and verification in DevOps, explained by the co-author of DASA DevOps Specify and Verify course. Luca is going to take a deep dive into the topic of specification and verification in DevOps. He has been a DASA ambassador for many years. Luca is also a partner of DASA and has been providing top-notch trainings to organizations such as Allianz, Mercedes-Benz, Vodafone, UniCredit, and Bosch. I'm pretty sure you know all of these. Harnessing more than a decade of experience in the industry, Luca has written the training, and he wishes he had received this training when he started his career as a test engineer. During his career, joining many different teams in many different roles, what has instilled in him is a keen interest in understanding how teams create valuable, robust products that delight customers. DevOps has always played a huge role in this endeavor, providing the necessary process, tools, and mindset foundations. Next slide, please. Please understand that this webinar is based on a very robust topic deriving from course DASA DevOps Specify and Verify. The entirety of the course is about 16 hours in a classroom. In today's session, you will get an overview of how specification and verification have evolved and how they fit into the modern DevOps organization. Next slide, please. To discuss the logistics and housekeeping of this webinar, please understand that all the participants are on a listen-only mode. You're welcome to ask questions during the webinar using the webinar chat. We will have one of us answer the questions for you. Towards the end of the webinar, you will also be asked to take a poll. Your feedback is very important to us. Please don't forget to take the poll after the webinar so we can make DASA better. You will also receive access to the recording and slides of the webinar by Monday, which is May 23rd. This webinar will also be available on demand on the DASA website under the resources section. Now, without further ado, let me hand it over to Luca to take you through specification and verification aspect of DevOps. Hello, Luca.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. I have one very unwelcome guest. I hope it won't annoy you as much as it does me. There's a fly buzzing around my head. I'm sure you can sometimes see it in the video. So, yeah, very sorry about that. I hope the audio doesn't disturb you. Yes, a very warm welcome, and I'm very, I'm very pleased about this course that we created, because I think it touches on something that is really, really important and really sort of crucial and foundational to what we are trying to achieve with DevOps and with modern product development. So in a sense, it started out with an oldie but goodie. You're probably familiar with Gene Kim's 3 ways. So the first way, systems thinking, considering the entire value stream, going towards the principle of flow. The second way, amplifying feedback loops, optimizing your organization for learning. And the third way, actually using this, this capacity for learning for continuous experimentation, actively looking for ways to improve your product, the way you are creating your product, anything at all, really. And whoever you show those 3 ways, they would say, oh, yeah, this looks really reasonable. That's a good idea. But I have discovered, both for myself and for my clients, that getting from sort of the theory and this, being a good idea, to actually applying it in practice can be harder than it appears at first. And this is what this course is hopefully going to help you with, bridging that gap, going from, okay, there's those three ways and they sound, like a good thing. Now, how do I apply them in daily practice? How do I make them work for me, for my organization? So, what are we talking about here? The first is value. This is a staple of Agile and DevOps literature. They talk about value, but where does value come from? And this is maybe the first question that the course opens up and says, okay, fine, we want to create value for customers. So who's the customer? Who's the user? What's the value? And at the same time, maybe if you're coming from a traditional software QA background, QA is quality assurance, right? So what's the relationship between value and quality? And the answer is that, quality is nothing without somebody who consumes it, and then you are getting to value. Somebody is deriving something positive from the thing that you created, hopefully anyway. And so this is the first crucial step that we take in this course of helping you discover who your customers are, your consumers are, your users are, and what the value is that they are deriving from your product, whatever that may be. And that brings us to a very important next aspect, which is, something of a pet peeve of mine, which is the concept of value streams. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing at all wrong with value streams. In fact, they are a very good idea. What's the concept behind a value stream? That's the idea of sort of inspecting all of the different steps, all of the different stages, all of the different activities and involved persons in going from an idea to actual value, to an actual product in front of the customer offering value. So a value stream is a good idea, except it implies directionality. It implies that, it only goes in one direction. It goes from left to right. And I wish we would instead speak about value loops, incorporating feedback, transferring information, knowledge, observations back from, from the right-hand side, let's call it, of the value stream, back upstream, back up to the left, which of course is, one of the fundamental ideas of DevOps, isn't it? So this is yet another aspect that we'll try to fill with life during this course. How do you go from value streams to value loops? What does that mean? What does it imply? How do you actually do it in your organization? And I think this is the most important aspect of anything that we do in terms of DevOps, closing those loops, enabling us to learn. And of course, we do this on many different levels. So we do it maybe in a very tight loop, such as test-driven development or something like that, something which iterates on the order of minutes, all the way to large-scale ideas that take maybe several months to really ripen and come to fruition. So what we are doing in the Specify and Verify course is that we are offering you a multitude of different techniques, perspectives on different levels of the value stream that allow you to close those loops at all levels, so that eventually you end up with powerful nested value loops that enable you to learn what is actually happening with your product and how you can most successfully react to that. How can you better serve your customers? How can you better avoid problems? How can you make a more awesome product that delights your customers, that makes your organization successful. And that is just fun to work on. And as you can see in the slide, there's a lot that goes into it, from the very high level continuous business planning, collaborative development, all the way down to the nitty gritty of continuous testing, continuous release, etc. Now, if we talk about this, we talked about large scale, small scale. We talked about things like continuous testing. That kind of implies that we also need to talk about architecture in our specification and verification course. And you might think, what does that have to do with anything? And of course, the answer is that you can't consider the structure of your product independently of the structure of your organization. So if we want to create products that lend themselves to quick iterations, we need to ensure that we have an organization that doesn't counteract this. So for that reason, we also talk about, what would an organization look like? What would an architecture look like that lends itself to those objectives, that makes those objectives work well, that enables you, yet again, to close value loops, to fill the 3 ways of Gene Kim with life. And maybe an important first step to take is to really make that transition from having QA a separate concern, a separate consideration, and make it an integral part of all of your product development activities. I teach a course on software quality assurance at the local university for working students. So they have a day job, and then in the evening they take those classes. And if I ask them, well, who of you actually does software QA? Nobody does. And to a point, I get where they're coming from. They're supposed to be software developers, right? But they really should be, they should feel that they have a responsibility, just like everybody else, for quality. And we try to really make the case for this cultural change, as well as technological change, as well as organizational change, of having QA not be a box, a phase in your development effort, as it very often still is, and instead make it a continuous concern during specification. You can think about, okay, how can we know what value looks like? How can we make sure that we've actually succeeded in capturing it during development? We can cross-check, see, okay, did we capture the thing that we were aiming for during specification? Is the specification still the best we can do? Or do we need to rewrite our user stories because we've learned something new about our product along the way? And that continues all the way into production, where, even during production, you will have QA, you will have testing in production, you will have monitoring, you will have feedback that somehow needs to be made usable and useful to all of the different organization parts upstream. And yes, this is why there's this drawing, and it's sort of T-shaped. There is still something like a proper testing phase right after you finish developing a given chunk of work. Presumably, once it's done, you will run a lot of automated tests, which is why I drew this sort of very, very tall and narrow in a very short amount of time. We're not talking about a testing phase of a week or two, which was, when I started working, that was still the norm, I guess. We're talking about just this testing stage, which is really just a stage in your automation, in your CI system. And it takes, I don't know, 5 minutes or 15 minutes or however long, depending on your product. But the point is, there is no single phase where you care about quality and then never again. It is an ongoing concern. That is something that is necessary if you really want to apply the 3 ways of DevOps, if you really want to go through with it. And this is what the training is aimed to help you build, those kinds of processes, those kinds of techniques on all levels. And this is so, so important. This is something that I encounter very frequently in my practice, as a trainer or as a consultant, that organizations will build awesome value streams. The downstream direction looks really nice, is really well automated, is really well thought out. But there's just very little feedback. And if they get feedback, they don't quite know what to do with it. So I cannot stress enough, both in this call and in the training itself, I guess, how important it is to set yourself up for success by building those feedback loops and having the processes, having the culture to actually use what they tell you, to be able to actually listen to what your product tells you. So we give you pointers how to build those feedback loops, very, very small scale, very finely grained approaches such as TDD, test-driven development, on the unit test level, a runtime or cycle time of a couple of minutes, or BDD, behavior-driven development, specification by example, with a much larger scope and with a somewhat different perspective, on, of course, the same question: how can we describe and capture value, and how can we prove that we have captured the value that we were hoping to uncover for our customers? So it's not about creating more paperwork. It's not about writing big reports. It's really about finding ways of closing that loop with as little effort as we can, with as high fidelity and speed as we can. Another thing that is very important and is, I think, not used as much as it could be, which is, how do you transfer quality assurance? How do you transfer value assurance, in fact, into operation? If we are serious about DevOps, if we are serious about having DevOps teams who are end-to-end responsible over the entire lifecycle of a product, what does that mean about value assurance? How can we apply those thoughts and those philosophies in production? So this is also something that we discuss during the training. What's the right approach? What are the right perspectives? What are ways of getting there? Of being able to listen to your product while it is in production, where you're getting, of course, the most valuable, the highest fidelity feedback directly from your customers, directly in real life. And not just in terms of testing, but also in terms of interactions with customers, in terms of A/B comparisons, and in terms of monitoring. Just watch your product, stand there, look at it, and see what it tells you, and you will surprised how much you can learn. Now we've been talking quite a bit about techniques, about approaches, about perspectives, but there used to be those people called testers, right? I should know because I used to be one. I started my career in software QA, and to this day, it's of all of the activities in software development, it's probably the one that I enjoy the most. It's just fun. There's just something about the thrill of the chase, as far as I'm concerned. So you're going to take that away from me, are you? DevOps doesn't let me be a tester anymore. Isn't that disappointing? So, okay, fine. I'm not going to be a test expert anymore. I'm not even going to be a QA expert anymore. Making the scope a little bit broader than just testing and branching out into looking for ways to uncover quality and value. I can be something even more awesome. I can be a value assurance expert. What does that mean? It means I'm not anymore the sole person who somehow has the job of making sure the product runs right after the fact, which has always been a somewhat disappointing position, to be honest. Like, people throw you stuff over the wall, and then inevitably you find bugs, and then everybody's annoyed because this is a really inconvenient time for you to find bugs. We're almost done. So now you get to change that. You get to instead support your team, support your colleagues, harnessing your expertise, not only after the fact, after the product has been created, but at its conception already. During specification, as you're sitting down with the product owner. During development, as you're working with software development. In operations, as you're working side by side with operations experts, SREs, whatever you want to call them, and you enable them to have this focus on quality, to offer them the right tools, the right mindset, the right techniques, so that everybody can share in this responsibility of creating and ensuring great value. And of course, doing all of this manually. In fact, DevOps is very much about tooling, isn't it? I think it's important to realize that tools are not the end goal. They're just a means, not the end. So we can talk about using technology as a force multiplier, as a way to enable everybody in this value loop to iterate more quickly, iterate with higher fidelity, learn even more quickly, react even more quickly, and with just as much ease to the things that they have learned. So I think those are all of the important aspects of this training. This is, and maybe you can tell by the way that I can't stand still, this is something that is really important to me. All of those aspects that I just talked to you about. And I want to remind you that this all goes back to this old story of Gene Kim's 3 ways. System thinking, creating feedback loops, continuous experimentation and learning. So in a sense, I claim that Specify and Verify is the most DevOps training there is, because it's exactly the thing that fills Gene Kim's 3 ways with life. So to take a step back and talk about the way that DASA, the DevOps Agile Skills Association, thinks about DevOps. and the different elements of DevOps. How does specify and verify fit in? So it's put into what they call the professional track, know and apply. It sits alongside the other two trainings, enable and scale, create and deliver. And I know some of you will ask me, okay, who is this training for? Who should take this training? And my honest answer is, I wish everybody would, because I think everybody can learn something from this training. If you look at the competence model, the DASA competence model, it offers 12 different competencies, or skill areas, knowledge areas, as they call them. And as you can see, the specify and verify focuses on 4 of them: test, specification, test and specification, business analysis, business value optimization, architecture and design. And I think you will agree that everybody, it is important for everybody to consider optimizing for value, discovering value. You might be thinking, okay, should a tester take the specify and verify course? And the answer would be yes. I can probably not tell them very much about the art and craft of testing, because they know a lot about it already, more than we can offer in a 2-day course. But what I can give them is the context. I can explain to them, this is how a product owner thinks. This is how you can support developers. This is what's important as far as testing and production. And the same goes the opposite way around. If we think about specify and verify, should a product owner take this course? Yes, absolutely. Will I be able to tell them something they didn't know about how to be a product owner? Probably not. Not in a 2-day course. But what I can give them is the context. I can explain to them, this is what QA experts care about. This is how they think. This is how they work. Those are the tools they use. And what I can give to everybody who joins this course is having that broad perspective, getting to think not just in terms of their own specialties, but thinking very broadly about all of the things that need to fall into place in order to capture and provide value. Not just thinking in terms of value streams, but thinking in terms of value loops. I think this was a very, very brief, but hopefully interesting introduction into all of the topics that we are touching on in Specify and Verify. And yet again, I'm really happy about this course. And I wish this course had existed back when I started my career. And so I wouldn't have had to learn everything the hard way myself. And instead, I could have given, a head start. So thank you very much for listening to this very brief introduction. And I think I'm going to hand the mic over again to Eliza and lead us through the rest of the webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Luca, for picking such an essential topic from the course and taking our audiences through the nuances of how specification and verification are handled in DevOps teams. I want to move to the Q&A round, but I personally have a few questions for you from this particular course. Considering that you co-authored this course, you designed this course based on the experiences that you had, during your first years of working as a test engineer, what do you expect from your learners when they walk into your course? Do you have any expectations from your learners? What should they know when they walk into your classroom or even your virtual classroom, Luca? I'm sorry, nowadays.
Yeah, so I think they should have a reasonable knowledge of, of the fundamentals of agile product development, of DevOps, be familiar with the terms and concepts, such as, for example, as you learn in the DevOps fundamentals. But other than that, nobody needs to be an expert in, I don't know, QA or an expert in specification or anything of that sort. So in that sense, I don't have any expectations other than people having an awareness and a focus on products.
Okay. Okay. So when people come to you and they ask you about this course, I know that you do the product owner course as well. I know you deliver trainings for product owner. I know you deliver trainings for the fundamentals. I know you deliver trainings for specify and verify. I know you very well, Luca. I'm kidding. So people usually ask me, when I speak not just with the partners, but even when I speak with the learners, they usually ask me, hey, what is my learning path? Am I supposed to take the fundamentals and then the specify and verify and then the product owner? What is the relationship in between these courses? What would my learning journey look like once I take these courses? Or do you even say that, should I even go for this particular learning journey? Should I start someplace else? I wanted to be able to understand for my learners, so I could give them an answer on this.
Now, it's an excellent question, and in particular, I think it's a reasonable question, seeing as there is a Data DevOps product owner course, and we do have some aspects of of the work of a product owner in the Specify and Verify course by nature. What does a product owner do? They work on the product specification, right? So the answer is, okay, firstly, according to DASA, you are required to have a DASA DevOps fundamentals certification in order to be able to join the DASA DevOps Specify and Verify course. And if you don't have that, then I have options for you. There is a combination course where you can just do everything in one fell swoop. And that's very valuable. And I think it's also important because if you've got the fundamentals course, or if that means you will be familiar with the concepts, and we can build on them. All right, so what's the difference between product owner and specify and verify? The difference is that the product owner course really focuses on the craft of the product owner, building a product backlog, writing user stories, decomposing a product, understanding the value. Whereas specify and verify just takes a somewhat different perspective on that same subject, and it focuses a lot more on what does a product owner need to do in order to enable the rest of the value stream to do their work well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you look at the DASA competence model, where you have your knowledge areas and you have your skill areas, if you want to go back to that slide, that would be
Yep.
great too. But if you look at the competence model, it shows that once I take the specify and verify course, in between the knowledge areas of architecture and design, business value and optimization, analysis and test specification, I will be proficient in doing these things. I wanted you to shed a little bit more light on this, as in what is included within these knowledge areas and this particular course. What will the learners get out of this?
What will the learners get out of this? So there are multiple levels to this. So maybe if we start at the bottom, we'll talk about very concrete techniques such as test-driven development, behavior-driven development, how to write good user stories, how to think about your product portfolio, how to manage your product horizons, have a flow of new topics, of new ideas, of new potential value into your value stream. And then as we go sort of further up, we talk about broader topics. We talk about how do we build a value stream out into a value loop? How do we close those different feedback loops on many different levels and enable a powerful DevOps organization?
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'm not going to take any more of your time. We will move to the Q&A round of this webinar. Ladies, gentlemen, if you have not asked your question yet, please use the GoToWebinar chat to put in your questions, and I will be taking your questions right after I show you a few slides. Luca, could we please move to the scheduled slide?
Yeah. What?
There we go. So here are a few upcoming schedules. You can sign up for Luca's classes using our partner course calendar. Luca will also be promoting his upcoming Specify and Verify schedule through DASA. Please do not forget to check your email for an attractive promotion pricing through DASA on his upcoming courses. For those who have joined us today as a training partner or a trainer, and you want to get accredited to deliver this course, please wait for your email, our email as a matter of fact, and you can sign up for the upcoming TTT hosted by DASA and led by Luca himself. So as you can see, Luca does not only do the Specify and Verify course, but he offers other courses as well, such as Product Owner, Fundamentals, and the DASA DevOps Coach, out of which the Product Owner and the Coach courses are from the leadership level. Specify and Verify is from the professional level, and Fundamentals is where you probably want to start. It's from the foundation level. Next slide, please. So I have questions for you. Well, I have plenty of questions for you, Luca. I think I should have taken less time asking mine. So the very first question is from Bernard. How could you capture value in systems of systems where the DevOps team is not in contact with the users of the systems of systems? I wouldn't even know about this, Luca.
Well, what did the thing do? Just lost the question. Where did it go? Okay, there it is. Well, I suppose that's an interesting question because it goes towards team organization, because it goes towards the product structure. I think the question is there a visible aspect of value to anyone, even a consumer within the organization? So maybe a DevOps team, as Bernard wrote, is not in contact with the end user of the system of systems. There must be somebody that is deriving value from what they're building. Otherwise, why are they building it, right? So those are really the people that you need to focus on, that you need to interact with in order to capture that value, even if it turns out to be sort of internal value. You're providing a service, a platform service, for instance, for your product teams who go and build products for the end users. The product, or rather the value focus, still stays the same. This is exactly what we saw in this first slide. We had quality plus consumer equals value. You need to be aware of who your consumer is, who your user is, and then you should be able to discover value. I hope that answers your question. If not, Bernard, feel free to ask a follow-up.
I think there is a follow-up, I believe. So Bernard is asking again, you build for selling the product, the user purchases the product to achieve an aim. These are different issues.
You build for selling the product, the user purchases the product to achieve an aim. These are different. think about military systems. So, okay, fine. I think I see what you're getting at. So I, as the, as the organization that builds a product, I have a different perspective on value than the user who wants to buy it. And that's very frequently the case. And that is, I suppose, also the art, for example, of a product owner to understand those different perspectives on value. I'm trying to think of an example, but it's just a very frequent occurrence. A visitor to a hotel cares about very different things, has a very different value perception on the product of an overnight stay than the owner of the hotel, and that's perfectly fine. Those are two different user personas, and they both have their place, and they both need to be satisfied. If no visitor stays at the hotel, then the owner of the hotel won't make money. And if, however, the hotel is not well run and doesn't make money, well, then again, the hotel owner doesn't make money, and that in both cases, that's not working out well for them, is it? I hope that made it clear.
Okay, so let's move on to the next question. This is from Jan. I know Jan, as a matter of fact. What would be the benefits of following this course for a Scrum Master or an Agile coach?
Excellent
This
question.
is a good one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is. And I think it's a very important question. So first of all, let me just come out point blank and say I think the value would be huge, and I'm not just saying this because I want to sell the course, but because I'm actually convinced of it. It's a matter of the perspective, I think, of really going beyond your team. The Scrum Master is obviously at the team level, but the idea of specify and verify is to think beyond teams, perhaps, and think in terms of value streams, whatever is included in that, and enable yourself to build feedback loops that enable you to build great products. So that's something that's very important to a Scrum Master to understand how he and his team can fit into the entire value stream. And if the team really encompasses the entire value stream, which is possible, then okay, how can I ensure that I'm applying Gene Kim's 3 ways? How can I ensure that I'm building powerful feedback loops? And the same, of course, goes for an Agile coach who maybe takes a bit of a different perspective on that same issue, and says, okay, how can I support my team or my teams or my teams of teams in capturing this value, making it flow, making feedback flow, and just understanding both the tools that they have at their disposal and the mechanisms perhaps sitting behind that. Again, in my experience, this is the most crucial problem. So many organizations that I find or that I come across, they are trying really hard and they're full of smart people, but they just struggle with actually capturing feedback and working with it effectively. It happens so often that they say, we thought we did everything right. We did all the Scrum magic, we had all our stand-ups and retrospectives and whatnot. But we built the wrong product. I've literally heard people say that. We wanted to go live after a year or 1.5 years of development. We wanted to go live. And 2 days before we did, we discovered we couldn't because we had missed something crucial. So I think this is just a very important and very difficult subject.
Okay. But I have another question, which is, it sounds like a question I would ask Luca. It's about exams. So they're saying that, they have taken the DASA DevOps Fundamentals certification already and passed it. and they would like to know a little bit about the Specify and Verify exam,
So,
how hard it is, and maybe even I can pass it, Luca. I'm pretty sure they can. But they want you to shed some light about the exam. What are the structure? What are the requirements? I mean, we already know fundamentals is a prerequisite for this particular course, and you are also offering what, a crash course, something before the Specify and Verify that gets them both the certifications. So they're asking about the Specify and Verify exam.
yeah, so the Specify and Verify exam is pretty much like all of the other DASA exams that you know and love. It's a multiple choice exam, takes 60 minutes plus 15 minutes for non-native speakers. You need to pass with more than 66% of correct answers. And if I remember correctly, it's 45 questions. So I think it's quite doable. And in any case, I don't think there is much of a surprise there. It's, you know, it's like all of the other DASA exams, except for the leader exam, which takes a different tack.
All right, thank you. We do have more questions, but being respectful of your time, we will be able to answer these questions. Just please send us your questions to our email, learning@devopsagileskills.org, and we will be able to answer these questions for you. We hope that you had fun during the webinar. We would request all of you to fill out the poll at the end of this webinar. Like I said earlier, your feedback is very important to us. We would like to thank you all and Luca once again for joining the event. Thank you, Luca. You can sign up for upcoming events using the DASA website. If you are a partner and you would like to host an event with us, please send us an email again at learning@devopsagileskills.org. Thank you, and we hope to see you again in our upcoming events. Have a great rest of the week.